My wife's sister made a joke during the family get-together. Should your spouse be unfaithful to you with her real love, will you cry, her high school sweetheart? Everyone but me laughed. In any case, he is powerless in bed. My spouse grinned. I simply answered, "Message received," and lifted my hot dog. That night I moved out, stopped communicating, and disappeared. One year, my name is Jack Carter, and I believed I had the whole marriage thing worked out at the age of 29. Look, I believed in the romantic notion that marriage was like cement for 8 long years. Combine everything properly. Combining ingredients, allowing it to cure, and voila, you have an indestructible, eternal product. What a bunch of shit that was. However, it's 2020 in hindsight, right? Clara as well as, I couldn't remember how many times I'd gone through the ringer. We had survived those grueling formative years when we were broker as opposed to a joke, consuming instant ramen as if it were a fine dining experience. I'm referring to the inexpensive items as well. No nonsense about fancy cup noodles. If necessary, we would split a pack of top ramen into 2 dinners, putting in whatever pitiful veggies we could buy from the grocery store's sales section. Our initial flat was, whether we wanted to or not, we could hear our neighbor's whole life stories in a shoebox with paper-thin walls. This mattress was as thin as a pancake during their sleep, most likely purchased from a dubious second-hand shop that had an unpleasant odor like dashed hopes and mothballs. The thing that truly bothers me now, though, is this. At the time, I believed we were a team. We would engage in knockdown drag-out bouts that would continue till dawn. The voices come from shouting and flinging charges like divorce party confetti. After that, we would fall from tiredness and make amends, with fervent kisses and hushed regrets, promising that we would never let things to get so awful again. Rinse and repeat, because it seems that we were willing to accept punishment. I was once referred to as Clara's rock, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Spoon. At parties, she would talk about how I was the reliable one, the trustworthy man who anchored her when her head, with all her wild ambitions and lofty dreams, she drifted off into the skies. I wore that insignia as if it were a medal of distinction. Every time she introduced me as my anchor, Jack, I would puff out my chest. I never understood that being someone's rock also meant that I was about as fascinating as observing the drying of paint. And when something more intriguing appeared, it was equally simple to disregard the sign that began to appear. So gradually that I nearly thought I was dreaming. It's like that. Little details that appear unimportant until you put them all together and see what a terrible tapestry of neglect you're looking at. Her hand ceased stroking my shoulder as she passed me in the corridor. This automatic thing, this informal touch, used to be that declared, "Hey, I see you. I love you." Eventually, I came to the realization that it had been weeks since I had experienced that soft touch. Suddenly, I find myself standing there like a pitiful ghost, wishing for crumbs of love. She began to smile at her phone more than at me. Additionally, isn't that a kick in the teeth? She would be smiling at that fucking screen when I walked into a room, completely swiping thumbs across the keyboard, engrossed in whatever online discussion seemed more interesting than anything I could contribute. When I asked her who she was messaging, she would wave dismissively and murmur something about her sister, her job, or I had never heard of this friend. However, as soon as she glanced at me, the smile would vanish, like if someone had flipped a switch, and the happiness simply vanished from her face. Observing our gradual laughter was the most unpleasant aspect turned into quiet. We used to make fun of each other for the most ridiculous things. Unusual neighbors, bad films, and inside jokes that probably weren't all that hilarious. But because we were young and in love, they made us go crazy, and when you had someone with whom to share it, everything appeared funny. Those times become increasingly infrequent until they talked about grocery lists and logistics. As for the energy bill, did you remember to pay it? That quiet wasn't merely silent. This wall, which was alive and breathing, became thicker every day. I attempt to overcome it with jokes or tales about my day, but they would be crushed by the imperceptible wall Clara had built around herself. She would make the proper noises and nod courteously, but her eyes would be somewhere else. The experience was similar to speaking to a stunning mannequin that would periodically open its mouth to say, and that's nice, honey. I began to repeat and analyze each exchange. Like a forensic detective, I had talks in my head attempting to determine where everything went wrong. Is there something I said or didn't say? Was I overly predictable or uninteresting, too much of the solid rock she claimed to love? The more I made an effort to get back in touch, the more she appeared to drift off, like if I were attempting to reach for smoke with my bare hands. Friends would inquire about our marital status, and I would give them the conventional response while wearing this phony smile. Fantastic. Not much better. In the meanwhile, I was inside. I was slowly dying, as I saw the lady I had vowed to love and adore rapidly change into a courteous, a stranger who just so happened to have my Netflix password and bed. The most perverse aspect was that I continued to think we could make it right. I believed that if I simply put in more effort, loved more, and became more, I might be able to win her back in some way. As if she were a trophy, I momentarily misplaced, instead of a someone who had just determined that I was no longer worth the effort. I forgot because I was too busy being her rock. People stepping all over pebbles don't hurt them. In retrospect, I can see that I was already fading into obscurity in my own life, disappearing into the background like wallpaper that no one sees until it begins to peel. However, I simply continued to mix the cement over time, believing that with enough perseverance and the appropriate recipe, I could construct something indestructible. What a farce that proved to be. What's humorous, do you? Everyone imagines screaming and yelling indicates that a marriage is failing. Hollywood has taught us all that, as soon as couples begin tossing plates, the game is ended when doors are slammed. I'll tell you something, though, that I discovered the hard way. The value of silence is 1,000-fold, worse than any yelling altercation you can think of. There was intensity in our arguments, at least when Clara and I were fighting. Fire. We were still talking to each other, even if we were angry and saying hurtful things. We cared enough to become agitated and let our feelings run wild like a messy human being. A train crash. However, I should have realized I was really screwed when she completely quit fighting with me. It was such a slow change that I nearly missed it. One day, there will be these titanic conflicts that rock the walls. And then all of a sudden, Clara was reacting to everything with this snarling grin that made me want to strike an object. Obviously not her. Although I'm not that type of person, perhaps a wall, a pillow, or one of them. For just such a scenario, sporting goods companies provide inflatable punching bags. A dot. It began with the minor disputes first. I had suggested that perhaps our date night should be spent at a different restaurant, something different from that expensive Italian restaurant with servings the size of a toddler's hand and the when. Waiters bring you water. They pretend to be doing you a favor. Not as she usually does, but I adore there. After a light-hearted argument over culinary preferences and tiramisu, I would receive a strange half-smile and a shrug that indicated nothing at all and everything simultaneously. When I would question her about more significant issues, like whether we should repaint the living room. Did she consider acquiring a dog, perhaps? Was she interested in spending Thanksgiving with my parents? She would provide me with these answers that weren't truly answers. I'm sure you'll do whatever you believe is best, Jack. Work things out. It's your responsibility. Every response was given with the same annoying grin, as if she knew. Some joke I didn't comprehend because I wasn't smart. The worst thing happened when I eventually summoned the bravery to ask the huge question that had been bothering me, like an emotional parasite for months. We were seated on our sofa. I just blurted it out during the conversation because she had taken the recliner as her own throne. A commercial pause. Are you content, Claire? Really satisfied with us, I mean. She didn't even put the TV on hold, didn't glance at me. Instead, they continued to gaze at a dumb auto insurance commercial. As if she had been waiting all her life for this moment, a grin appeared on her face. Why do you ask questions already possess the answers to? That statement struck me like a freight train full of dashed hopes and stale expectations, guarantees. It emptied me from the inside out, sucked away all of my former self-assurance and optimism, and then left behind this empty shell that felt like a cheap counterfeit but looked like Jack Carter, due to the fact that I didn't understand the response. Sincerely, I had no idea what was going through her mind anymore, which is why I was asking. However, it seems that it was useless to even raise the question because ignorance was so evident. Did I give up, though? Absolutely not. Since I'm Jack Carter, always dependable. Additionally, quitters are for those who don't appreciate the importance of diligence and resolve. I thee.